I just got off our group call and I'm excited because I was thinking a lot of the same things we're doing. So, why was this call so important to how we're going to execute this moving forward, land this, and be able to communicate what our lessons learned were for other people who would get us paid more? So, essentially, what we're in is we're in the simplification business, and that's what we're building. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. First of all, the level set, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So Leonardo da Vinci is somebody who did a whole bunch of amazing things, but really he broke everything down to simplicity. The common tagline that we're using here is sales is simple, but simple is hard. So here's where sales is simple. It's as easy as an individual, Cindy and Steve, interacting with each other. That couldn't be simpler. What that's happening in terms of an economic exchange is also something simple. That's Cindy, she has a capability. That capability is something that Steve wants. And by the way, the blue and the green, blue always represents Omnitrax or the vendors, and green always represents the customer. So what does he want? He wants an outcome. Where they agree on a contract. So picking up the Moneyball reference, we are in the business of producing contracts or helping to enable sellers to produce contracts. Unfortunately, the way that the world works, it's complex. Simple is complex. Why is it complex? Well, sales productivity ideas, sales productivity prescriptions happens in silos. Everybody's got an opinion of what happens in sales. Each of these departments develop their own things. This creates this fog, create random acts of sales support, which we're calling the bends. There's other variables with the bends too about shifting businesses, shifting buyers, and everything like that. So it's not only the information that we're producing, it's the change on the customer as well. This costs a lot and it creates lots of inefficiency, but because companies, the vendor, Omnitrax doesn't see it, they let it go on. And ultimately what they do is they manufacture reps that talk about product. So it creates this huge choke point in this system, this communication system. Let's look on the customer side. The customer side is going to evaluate their suppliers in one of two ways. The product people, if they are buying in the market to buy a product to solve a problem they already know about, hello, procurement, and they're going to go find the lowest cost price. Why wouldn't they? I mean, seriously, why wouldn't they? Is any product out on the market that materially or better? No, they more or less all do the same thing. However, if they don't know what they're doing and somebody comes to them figuring out what's possible, this is what they have to figure out. So what they need to do is they need to figure out how to frame an outcome. We've got an outcome wheel for that. How would they evaluate it? Basically at a very high level, it's evaluating what's possible, figuring out the patterns that they have or the market has, the path forward, and the proof. And this is what this person is looking for. So you can see we're in completely different views, and the way that customer actions are moving is more on this side. So basically what we're saying is the overall selling system is broke. Our viewpoint of that, of fixing that, is very simple. And again, to me, this is very macro, and to me, this is very, very clear. Macro is very clear. You model your buyers, step one. Step two, you map your value, you map your capabilities. How do you add value to them? And step three, you match those capabilities. So it's the what they want, how you do it, who, what, and how. The who are the individual people that need to be connected with the what and how. Sales is simple, simple is hard. This is very simple. So the concept that we're doing is we're fixing a broken system. The way that we're fixing that broken system is model, map, match. Okay. Ultimately, how this schematic lays out is so the observation of this system means it's a team sport. It can't be done in individual silos because the buying environment is complex. So the first question is how do we add value? We have to simplify it for them. That's really ultimately the two questions that we have to ask. So we model out the customer's agreement network. We map out a possible outcome story. We match the messenger, how to sell value, and we manage the engagement and the rhythm with the customer. All of those things allow us to communicate to the right audience at the right time, the right delivery, with the right message. The bottom line is we fix that system by mapping out the value communications process, which is audience, message, messenger, and tuning a relationship rhythm that factors all these things together. To me, this is super simple. And by the way, these are all coded. These are the sales objectives. So sales and marketing are part of a business process to develop economically valuable relationships. Very simple. Our hero's journey is more or less helping OmniTrax go through this. What's their objective? They want to achieve organic growth. We could go through that how. The root cause. Organic growth is a process, not an activity. So we have to move away from prescribing activities to matching a process. Involving many people, who's impacted. So this is where the among messaging fits in. There's too much inefficiency is why change. We're not calculating that, but where people are seeing it and feeling it in their frustration. So we have a lot of emotion around it. If we took better inventory, we'd help them see it better. What's the core solution? We're talking about building enabling services, not stuff. We'll talk about what enabling services are, and the best approach is to fix the plane while it's running. Carve out little pockets of white space to be able to do it. This is basically the game plan. It's this simple. Unfortunately, simple is hard. So what is it that we're doing? To be very simple about it, the core design point is we're looking at this system this way. There's an audience, there's messages, there's messenger, and there's an interaction point. So to be specifically about it, the core things that we're building are, one, we're modeling their world and the perception of value. We've done that. That's the value map, and we're going to create a buyer's guide to help the clients figure that out. In order to populate that, we have to be able to communicate OmniTrax capabilities. That's the capability map. The capability map is going to go hand in hand with the buyer guide. All of these things must fit together. Match, we're connecting the dots. The seller's guide is so that they can take the capability map and match it to the buyer guide. And monitor the objectives. That's how we're going to, the achievement of objectives over time, because the sales cycle happens over time. That's what the sales objectives are for. It could not be more simpler, but simple is hard. So in order to make that all work, what we have to recognize is what the flow, the connections among all of these different parts, because human beings don't work as individuals, they are connected. So we have to decode the audience, and the decoding process, we have a feedback and encoding between the messenger and the audience, and this flow and what their interactions are. And then there's relationships that happen with many, many interactions. So there's a flow that happens here. There's also a flow, if you look at the red flow here, there's a feedback mode of what is it that many in the audience want to make sure that we're building the right capabilities. Sellers have to encode and decode, but then they also have to decode what their audience needs to the rest of the organization. And then messages have to be encoded. So we have a macro level of form of communication here and a micro level form of communication here. And this whole system has to have a feedback loop as well. So this is every one of these interaction points has noise because of the bends. So the bends gets in the way of all of that. But really, we're just talking about modeling their world, the audience, but we're being informed of what those connection points are. Monitoring the objectives, the interactions, those are the sales objectives. Match, the messenger, we're designing them last. And the messages is ultimately what the capability map is about. So optimizing conversations, how do we break that down and be a little more clear? Really what we have to do is figure out what's the valuable information. Capabilities, packaging, ideas, knowledge, all of this stuff is valuable information. We need to package that up into the capability map. We have a decoding strategy. And for this particular one, the enabling service, the engagement, the compelling conversations, we have to make sure that our sellers have empathy for the right buyers. We have to help them manage expectations and provide a feedback loop. All of these things are achieved with the value map and the routes to value. The next part then is optimizing environment, productive process. The decoding strategy, we have a feedback loop about what's happening, but we have to concentrate on the sellers there. So the sellers is, do we have the right talent? And is the information organized for it? So we touch a little bit on the talent part, and we're working heavily on the organization of information for sellers outside of that particular system. So this is making sure that we have the right environment for sellers. So the first one is the right engagement with sellers. The second thing that we're focusing on would be the right environment, we'll call productive processes. And then the third thing is making sure that the entire ecosystem is designed right, the dynamic design ecosystem. So this is where we're going to get into the factory. So we have 3 layers of it. So one would be the individual conversations the sellers have. 2 is, do the sellers have the right reinforcement program? And then 3 is the organization designed or have the right operating model to it. 3 things, 3 dimensions to solve this problem. How do we do that? How do we solve all of those problems where a core design point is relatively simple? Again, we have, at the end of the day, at this atomic level, it really comes down to the seller must, the salesperson, the messenger, and the audience person must interact together and meet in a 3-dimensional box, this 3-dimensional space. They must be talking, the buyer must be at the right level. And who is involved and why do they care? We must be in context with who this is. This is heavy on the role side. Timely, then it must be relevant. So what we're communicating and the value that we offer must be relevant. This is where we have business drivers. And then the third dimension must meet them somewhere on their decision-making journey, not their buying cycle, their decision-making journey. So really the questions, the 6 questions that we are focused on is in context, who's involved, why do they care? Relevant, what are their goals? How do they achieve them? And then when will they realize the results and where in their journey are they? We can understand all of this if we just stick to these simple basics. So we need a structure to organize the messages. That's what we're harping on. So here are the business benefits of a strategic sales enablement function, or the way to look at it. One of the ways that I look at sales enablement is, instead of making deliverables, they're managing processes. There are 4 processes with which they're optimizing. The message process, which is the concept to contact process. The engage process, which is the contact to contract process. The comply process, which is the contract to revenue process. And the talent process, which is hire to retire. We are focused on the bottom 2 for this engagement, message and engage. The message part is what messages. The engage part is plugging it into the sales objectives. Not everything. But if you look at it, what our goals are, we're going to provide targeted buyer insights, concrete differentiation, consumable content, larger deals, shorter sales cycle, and improve win rates. This is simple. Our concept of how we're going to do that is, right now, Omnitrax doesn't have any one person responsible for it. So we're going to need to create a new organizational construct. The organizational construct, the simple idea, is to create a business within a business. That business within a business provides services to advance the sales objectives in each bucket. So what we are going to be doing is defining enabling programs. Routes to value is ultimately an enabling program. There's a scope under each program that has a service. So there are services under each program. And the way that you build it is you formulate the service, you define the repeatability, and then you scale it. And then you scale that through a fundamental foundation. The enabling services that we're building are for each one of these sales objectives. So that's it. That to me is the macro. So what are we overcoming, and why do we have to have a lot of discipline with how we do it? Well, let's look at all of the things that we're overcoming here with our client. Let's look at all of the fog. The first fog is they have a clogged pipeline. They're not getting the throughput that they're looking for. Why is that the case? Well, there's a sheer volume of information that they're doing. We're trying to radically simplify that by providing order and structure to it. There are many different impacted stakeholders involved. They don't have a really good way to organize it. There's a lack of clarity for how buyers are going to look to be successful or not. They don't know how to succeed. We need to give them a little bit of an outline for that. The sellers need to navigate many different buyers and stakeholders, and how to do that is unknown. And then we need to be able to overcome powerful procurement processes in order to be able to get the deals that we want. On the seller side, the seller's challenge is they got a lot of clutter to cut through. They have to find the right champion. They don't know how to do that. They have to gain an executive sponsor. They're losing deals to no decision left and right, and they're defending price. They have to defend price or drive adoption. These are all burdens that are placed on our sellers because we're not confronting these buyer challenges. These situations create a clogged pipeline. The sales objectives provide the lingua franca between these items. What's another problem? Another problem is that they have this fog. They have tons of information. There's too many activities, too many cooks in the kitchen. So we've been talking about this. Julie did a great video on it, but we have to give this an identity because it's invisible for them. They don't understand how they're not working together, just like we are trying to learn how to make our Venn diagrams fit with each other. The more disciplined and the more observation we make, the more clear we make this for them, the easier it is for them to tackle. The third problem that we're running into is that the executive team is incredibly biased to thinking in terms of products. It goes all the way to the top. And what we're really struggling with is making sure we plant the seed that sales is not a mechanical linear process. It's an organic, nonlinear process. If the company is managing itself, and by the way, I say the company, the sales leader, Greg, doesn't know that the rest of his peers are managing it this way. So the whole way from the investors to regulations and revenue recognition and the role of the CFO, budgeting responses, everything is really geared to the product mentality. And the things that we're looking at is looking at the world cross-functionally through a value communications process. This idea is incredibly disruptive. It sounds simple, I guess academically, but in reality, the amount of individual disruptions, and this is why the adopt messaging is so important, that we help people become a little bit more aware and open to what this huge shift is. The third challenge that we're wrestling with is customers don't care about staying silos. But we've got a whole bunch of different siloed groups that don't know how to do cross-functional collaboration. So the learning department or operations, every one of these different individuals are prescribing the answer to solve whatever it is, and they're getting frustrated because marketing, how come the rest of you guys aren't using my words? Sales, I'm getting frustrated with the rest of you guys, you're not doing this. Finance, I'm getting frustrated with sales because you're not entering the data correctly. Technology, I'm frustrated with all you people, you're not using the technology the correct way. Product, I'm frustrated with all you people. Marketing, you're not communicating our products as well. Sales isn't selling it the right way. Operations, I'm frustrated. Everybody's frustrated with each other, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work because they're all in their own silos, and the world doesn't work that way. The other problem is that for the deal that what we're solving for, no one owns the problem. No matter which business process that we want to highlight that sales enablement can address, no one is responsible for it. So that means every individual human being that's inside Omnitrax feels individually responsible for whatever it is their discrete deliverable is, rather than driving a higher order process. In order to get the transformation, the radical simplification, we need to make sure that somebody is responsible. There's got to be a throat to choke for the message process. There's got to be a throat to choke for the engage process. This doesn't exist within Omnitrax today. Another problem, a fourth problem, is in order to solve this invisible problem, we have to get people talking to each other. And the reason that they don't talk to each other is everybody's speaking a goddamn different language and seeing things differently, just like we are seeing things differently inside our own group. This is what I like to call the English to English translation problem. And this is why it's really important that we practice using the story builder activities, because it's a common language that we can describe the same thing, which is really where our sellers are trying to take customers on a journey. And that's a hero journey, because the journey should be about making this person a hero, which casts our seller in the role of the guide. It's just that simple. We also have sub-stories. Cindy's job is to be a hero for the sellers. The sellers are the hero. She's their guide. Brooke's job is to be the guide for Cindy, so on and so forth. My job, our job, is the guide for Cindy and Greg. So all of these different parts, we have different heroes, and everybody needs to be made successful. That's the whole idea of among messaging. How do we find the common wins for everybody so that the circuit handles more effectively? Another challenge that we're dealing with, and this is why I'm so huge on we got to tell our wins, is that the antibodies of negativity are going to add up. Frustration is a negativity. Time frame or expectations, they're all negatives. And this is where humans commit, basically innovation suicide. When we allow the negative antibodies to outnumber the positives. So we go and set out to do things, but they never work out the way we expect them. And then they say, fuck it, I quit, and that's where we run into inflection points. How we manage those inflection points has everything to do with the success or failure of any transformation issue. So this is another thing that these are all knowable. We need to be putting in, when we're in this stage, we need to be creating deposits in the positive column and providing them so that we can be communicating the positive column here when people get into this disillusion slope. What's interesting is our client is happier than we are right now. We're more frustrated than they are. They were in the disillusionment slope between Dallas and Townsend, and we were responding to it. But why are we going through that disillusionment slope ourselves? These are human natural problems that we're discussing. So I hope this is helpful for everybody. I look forward to getting your feedback on it. I just wanted to provide context for what's going on. And I look forward to getting your feedback and then using this to be in service of the things that we need to build moving forward. Take care.